Go ahead and take a moment to read through the problem. So pause this video till you're done with that. Now that you've read it, let's go ahead and let's look at what we're asking to do. Use matrix multiplication to find the total cost to build a bus and a lorry. Let this be matrix C. So here I have a bus and a lorry. A lorry is a fancy word for like a semi-truck in English, like England English. But we're going to take the cost of each of them and we're going to try to multiply by the hours it's taking or the amount that we're using of each, right? So this first matrix, I will tell you, we can do this 2 by 3. We can just set this information up into a matrix. So 6, 4, 3, 3, 4, 2. And we know this top one represents a bus. The bottom one represents the lorry. This is our labor, our wood, and our paint. The whole idea here is if we want to go ahead and figure out the total cost, we're going to multiply by the $8 per hour, $1 per block, and the $2 per tin, right? So we want to have some 3 by 1 matrix, so we multiply 1 by, because a 2 by 3 has to be multiplied by 3 by something. In this case, it'll be a 1, because we're just talking about money. And here, think about it as you multiply. I'm going to take labor times my top times the first element of this new matrix. So I want this top thing to be labor. And then wood times the second thing, so the second thing has to be wood. Paint times the third thing, so the third thing has to be paint. So our labor is $8. Our wood is $1. And our paint is $2. Now, as you notice, we go through, our labor matches up with labor, wood with wood, paint with paint. It all works out nicely. So let's go through and multiply this. As I take this 2 by 3 and times it by 3 by 1, I'm going to end up with a 2 by 1. So I do 6 times 8 is 48. 4 times 1 is 4. 3 times 2 is 6. Then for my second row, 3 times 8 is 24. 4 times 1 is 4. 2 times 2 is 4. When I add those things together, I get 58, which really represents $58. And I get 32, which really represents $32. Think about it the way we started. The top row was for the bus. The bottom row is for the lorry. So it means it costs $58 to make a bus, and it costs $32 to make the lorry. If you want to think about the follow-up, this is kind of like a challenge, a little harder than what I'd actually give you. But if it's saying take the matrix 100, 200, and if I multiplied it by what I just found of $58 for bus and $32 for a lorry, what would these things have to represent? If this is bus and this is lorry, these rows have to match these columns, then these columns would have to also be buses and lorries. And the idea behind this one is that it would be the total cost. It would be like if you built 100 buses at $58 each, right? That would give us a total of $5,800. And I bought 200 lorries at $32 each. That gives me a total of $6,400. This would be the total cost to build them all. Which, if I am doing my math correctly, it should be $12,200. That was some mental math, so you may want to double check things. Looks great. Okay. Finally, on the back side, we did a little investigation in class about these different properties. We looked at some examples. What we found is that the commutative property does not apply, but the associative and distributive does. So do they all apply to matrix multiplication? No. Only associative and distributive. This is important because the order we multiply things will matter. So remember that. Order is going to matter because we can't do A times B equals B times A. That's all for now.